everybody, and welcome to Playoff Parley. This is the first ever episode of this that we do, and hopefully it's good enough that we'll do more of them in the future. We're here to talk about playoffs. My name is Munchables. I'm joined by Penguin, Lyric, and Dagda, and we're going to debate a few topics over the next few minutes to see where we all stand on what we're excited about for playoffs and some of the conversations within the meta and things like that. I'm not going to give these guys an opportunity to introduce themselves, though. I'm just going to jump straight into it. I want to start by talking about the meta. So I'm just going to hit you guys straight up with the question, what is the most important pick in the meta right now? And I'll just hit you with my opinion so that we start a debate. Is Hecarim is the actual answer.
No, it's not. It's Tristana. Tristana can flex into 3 different lanes, and there's like Hecarim's good. I've seen way too many people just being able to kind of counter the Hecarim. It's got to be Tristana. Hecarim works great with other things. Tristana works great on her own.
No,
oh
it's Rel.
my god,
it's Rel. 100% Rel. Look, I have seen Rel just take over. So this is where I was actually wondering, like, is this a first pick worthy, or is this the pick that I think is going to have the biggest impact? Because I don't think Rel is first pick worthy, but I think that Rel is the pick that's going to have the biggest impact in playoffs. Because when I look at the strength of the Magnet Storm, the Engage, how well she synergizes with so many of these other champions, like Hecarim, like Lilia, like all these picks, I think it's just going to be Rel.
I think both of you are insane. Munchables is the expert here, knows what he's talking about. Hecarim has 38 picks on 11.5, 74% win rate. His champion's busted, can fit in any composition. It's
Well, hang on. The only reason he's being picked is because he's not good enough to be banned. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing. Like, you look at Tristana, she's like either banned or first pick in like pretty much all of the games right now because people have just moved towards this whole thing of like, she is the carry. She is first pick worthy. She is 100% impactful in all these different fights. And people just build around her.
I think for me, the distinguisher between these 3 champions is the fact that if you don't have Rel, I feel like Alistar and Leona still facilitate a similar enough role. Same with if you don't get Tristana, right? I think getting Kai'Sa is still good enough to where, like, sure, you can trade Hecarim for Udyr, but I feel like Hecarim does everything Udyr does so much better, offers so much in team fights, shuts down so many of these champions that there is no champion that fulfills that same role Hecarim does. Like, it's actually irreplaceable. If you get Hecarim, I feel like your chance of winning is actually 74% is what the stats say. So,
we'll have to check the VODs afterwards.
on the topic of the AD carries as well, I do think that Tristana, while she is very strong in her own right, I think it's also a bit of a symptom of other AD carries falling off. Like the Xayah pick, for example, has really started to fall out of priority because I feel like you can't, like, the game has sped up a bit and you need AD carries that can play a bit quicker than what Xayah can bring to the table. I feel like Jinx spiking on 2 items. You get these crit AD carries that can do very well in the laning phase and can spike around the dragon fights are much better. So I feel like Tristana's coming in through circumstance, whereas Hecarim is coming in through because mobility creep exists, and he has a passive that's like, hey, if mobility creep exists, you're the best champion in the game. So
I think the
I
thing
think he just won
for
by
Rel, though,
circumstance.
is that Rel helps champions do what Hecarim does. Because basically she launches herself in. She has that guaranteed ult CC, which lands the WCC, which then lands the ECC, which means that whatever champion you want is now in the team fight. You've a Renekton who's struggling all game to get onto this long-range AD carry. Doesn't matter. They're dead because you've just CC'd them for 4 billion years and then Renekton comes in with all the extra damage. Like, Rel solves so many issues. And as we already kind of said, it's like, dive starts to come in and you're trying to make sure that you've got these opportunities to guarantee these engages. Rel just rises so much in priority. She ruins Tristana, she ruins Kai'Sa, she ruins Jinxes, she ruins every AD carry, and she just, even the control mages can't deal with her. This champion just does so much.
I'll be honest, I think Oshin, Penguin is just completely out of the discussion. Tristana doesn't even matter. When it comes to Hecarim versus Rel, my problem is...
God! Wow!
To where I feel like Hecarim will find a way into any team fight, engage, or even with Phase Rush Ghost and Ian Ultimate, he can even like make ganks work that shouldn't really like nearby tower. Rel's guaranteed engage is so dependent on flash with how many champions stop crash down. It's like, sure, you can take Hex Flash and find cheeky ways into the fight, but again, then if your team's behind, you aren't controlling vision. Like, theoretically, it should be impossible or at least much harder to find those engages. So I think this champion is too circumstantial. Even if she's the best at what she does and sets up other champions, I think she would be the easy winner of this argument if Hecarim wasn't just so clearly absolutely busted, does everything well, and...
Well, like, hang on. You say that, but like, how many times have we literally seen a Hecarim go in and none of his team be able to follow him?
I can tell you,
damn far ahead. Not only
just because one player plays badly on Hecarim,
Munchables, I have the answer. Approximately 26% of the time is how often we see that.
All right,
but as well as that, like I just think that Tristana, like what you've all just said, is CC related. If you're a decent Tristana player, which in fairness, you look at some of the players that are going into playoffs, we're going to have some decent Tristana players coming into this, and I don't just mean AD carries, I mean like proper Tristana players. They will buff for all that CC, and then the Hecarim's just like, cool, I'm up a creek without a paddle here, and there's nothing they can do about it. So in my opinion, if you have a proper player on a Tristana, you can completely
I do want to say, I think if more
teams
start flexing Tristana towards the top lane, and even mid, we've only seen it a couple times, I do think Tristana as a pick will carry a lot more weight than she does right now. And again, I still think for AD carry, she's absolutely insane, but I want to see more players in Xiao who bring her up in the top lane.
I just had one thought, and I'll just add this in like as a bonus caveat. I think I'm willing to potentially move away from Hecarim to just throw in Lucian into this conversation, because in the last couple of weeks, hang on, let me make my point.
That's even worse than Penguin.
In the last couple of weeks, just get shouted down before I even make a case for it. In the last couple of weeks, when you look at these teams, like for example, all of our top lane focused teams, all of our mid lane focused teams, Lucian as a counter pick in both of those lanes brings so much to the table. And sure, these compositions on paper do look really terrible, but when you can just win lane, win game with champions like Lucian, I think that as a counter pick, and also the Jace can be kind of in this similar conversation, they could just take over the game by themselves. So especially when you got people like Xiaohu piloting it, I think Lucian could be one of the most valuable picks of a series.
I mean, you started off strong with the Hecarim, and you just nosedived so hard.
All right, well,
I want to see what I would love to see is like a statistical based analysis as well. Who comes out at the end of playoffs
Jordan
with the higher percentage of wins?
I think Jordan
That's what I want.
I
don't care about regular. This is the playoffs parlay. This isn't the regular season parlay. This is about playoffs.
All right. Well, that's going to be the end of the episode. We're going to go back after playoffs and have this conversation. All right. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on from the meta. Let's talk about the teams going into playoffs. And let's start off by saying who we think is the most underrated team going into playoffs. Now, I gave my answer on the meta first, so I'm going to let one of you guys go first and be thrown to the sharks on this one. So
JDG. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say JDG are probably the most underrated coming into playoffs. And the reason why I say that is they have the exact same roster they had for last year, where they were top 2 consistently, one spring split, all fine and dandy. They ended the split 6 wins, and yet they're not in any of our conversation. I included, I'm not putting them in any of our conversations of who's going to win the split, who's going to actually get top 2, who's going to be, representing an MSI. And I think that right now, people are kind of sleeping on them. I feel like they're kind of eking their way forward. They're not looking amazing. They're not dominating like EDG, but I think they're kind of, they're top 4 for a reason. That's all I'm saying.
I agree JDG is good, but I don't think they're underrated, because I think that they are very much deserving of top 4. I just rate them.
That's my problem.
Being underrated, I just rate
JDG
them.
would be my answer really too,
good.
But it's hard for me to answer this when it's like, I know I rate JDG highly, as we will all hear later, but there isn't a lot of like community discussion around them 100%, but I think when I look at where a lot of teams ended in playoffs, like for their placement, I think I'd rate every team about where they are. So to me, there isn't really an underrated team.
So I actually have a bit of a spicy one then, because I actually genuinely think FPX is underrated right now. I think because everyone has kind of looked at them and gone, hey, look, this team looked absolutely insane with Bo. They looked like they're going to win Worlds. And everyone's just like, God, they're terrible. Like, they're no longer this FPX that's going to take over everything. And I think as well, with Tien coming back in, he does look pretty good. And I think the biggest thing here for me is that, like, we're shifted over to a meta that I feel suits Tien better. Like, where we got, like, the Udyrs and the Heckrams and these things that can focus towards lanes and actually like work more towards the dives and where FPX really had their strengths. I think that this could be a time where we come back into playoffs. FPX, everyone has kind of been sleeping on a little bit, and they're like, hang on a second, this is actually a team that can do some really cool things. So I think FPX, I don't know if they're going to win, but I certainly think they're going to cause a few surprises and a few upsets.
I think for me, my two problems with looking at FPX is one, like now I don't know what jungler they're going to use. They brought in Tien for one series. He played against BLG. It's like, I don't have too many takeaways from that. He got Hecker in both games and busted champion. So, you know what I'm saying? And then my second... my second thing is like, I actually completely agree. I think this meta should fit Tien a bit better. I think we're getting better towards an FPX place. But at the same time, I still think FPX work best when Doinby does go on the Renekton's, the Kleds, the sets, the things he's been playing. And I wonder what will happen in an extended series where those start getting banned out, and those aren't like exactly meta already, right? If I pick an Azir up against them, despite what we saw in Top Esports versus WE, I feel like Azir should be coming out of that matchup feeling pretty good, denying their Renekton from being able to do anything. So I feel like FPX are a team I expect to finish, where they finish now, like 5th, 6th, but I think gating Harden will be hard.
I have a feeling. I'm watching Doomby. I feel like Doomby's now bringing out the light technologies. Like, we had dark technologies for a little bit, and now he's just kind of starting to bring out the normal meta stuff, because I've seen, like, the Victor come out. I know he's been playing the Azir a lot in solo queue, and has brought it out in a couple of games as well. I'm actually curious if we do... I know I agree with the lyric, where it's like, he's definitely looked better on these picks, where it has been, like, classic Doomby, kind of a bit of a wild card, and he plays these more roam-heavy styles. But I think there's something in the works here. I have an inkling. I sniff something.
The weird thing is that, like Victor Rise, those are the classic Doinby champions. Those are if you've watched LPL a long time, that's what you think of doing before. But FPX as a team just don't play around them well. His Orianna's pretty decent from what we've seen. Was practicing it last year, played at this split. And his Azir, he's now practiced in solo queue for like 3 years straight. But for some reason, like, just doesn't bring it out. Maybe an odd game here or there, but, heck, maybe that's what they're saving for the game 5.
I think actually the big question mark for me for FPX, which I did not expect to be saying this at the start of the split, is actually Nuguri. More recently on FPX, Nuguri's been struggling a bit. We're seeing kind of he's known as that kind of coin flip player where he'll either take over or fall apart. And I feel like more recently, it's been more on the side of fall apart. Whereas earlier on in the split, he looked amazing. So I feel like, especially with Zoom firing on all cylinders, it feels like 369 is back as well. You got Xiaohu playing well. I think Nuguri's actually going to struggle in the top lane matchups.
I'm going to just hit you. So Nuguri has, I will say, agree.
You're going to hit me.
Struggling recently. But he still has an average of 50 CSD of 15. He has a goal difference of 521 of 15. He has 10 solo kills, and he has the highest damage per minute, or nearly 600 damage per minute. Like, yeah, he's slumped. I still think he's Nuguri. I still think he's going to come back.
I agree, but I also I totally understand what Joe's trying to say, because, like, it's the Khan situation as well from last year, where it's like, is Nuguri a good player? Is Khan a good player? No question about that whatsoever. Does he work in an FBX ecosystem? I don't really think so, and I think that's been the biggest.
Let me bring it back,
even when Nuguri came in, like
15 CSD of 15, he is the most goal difference of 15.
No. I get that. I totally get that, but I just don't think the ecosystem that he kind of I don't think the whole picture fits. Like, I look at something like what 369 does or what Zoom does for their teams, and that works. That works because they play around that, versus FBX, who I personally don't think they play around that.
I'm kind of in the middle where I completely agree with Rob. I think individually, Nuguri is still playing like exceptionally well. You can see that in his laning phases. He manages the wave well, all the right trading patterns. The problem is that FPX don't play around him. They were doing it a bit earlier in the split. I think Bo was doing that more, especially with Chris. Bo and Chris would go towards top a lot more than we've seen Beichuan or Tien do. But at the same time, I do feel like he slots in better than Khan did last year, to where we even know from Damwon, like, Nuguri does fine on tank champions. Obviously, he had like the Lulu pocket pick last year. The problem is he's still not going to look like one of the best until FPX play around him. But I don't think FPX necessarily need to play around him. Like, I feel like he's in a fine spot. I don't think he's going to lose lane or get crushed by anyone. The question is, are FPX going to be able to, win through mid-jungle to bot hard enough to make up for the fact that they're not utilizing a superstar top laner?
That'll be the question. So we are undecided on FPX on whether they are rated, underrated, overrated. We'll maybe have to come back to that one. The one I will throw in as well is I think maybe IG are underrated.
I'm in.
And I don't have
I'm in, man. I'm all in.
Statistically on this one. This is one of those ones. It's all about the mojo. But you know what?
I think there was a
man.
quote recently from a player. It was just like, the light in Rookie's eyes has died, and I was like, oh my god. I think it was from EDG or something like that. I can't remember exactly who. I will find it, but it was a literal quote where it was just like, okay, that was a bit rough, but we'll see how they get in playoffs, I suppose.
I think they will do better than maybe a lot of fans are expecting of them. They will.
I was gonna say, I just want to add a quick point that I feel like if there's any team from like the low end of the bracket who can make a surprising run, it's obviously IG. They are more stacked than they were last year, where they were finishing first and like second in regular split respectively. So, do I expect them to? No, but they are the team that can. So, like, watching IG is always just going to be exciting, right? Like, if Rookie shows up in a high pressure situation, how Lucas and Shun are going to do in playoffs, which AD carry they're going to use. So, yeah, I think IG are probably the most fun team to look out for.
So let's flip the script then and talk overrated. Let's flame some teams here, because I'm gonna come straight at you guys and I'm gonna tell you RNG is overrated right now. JDG completely exposed them. If JDG were looking real shaky at the time and they just come in and go, hey, by the way, we have a competent top laner that's good enough to beat you 2-0, I think RNG are in a spot where, as I said before, the top lane pool in LPL is real strong right now. I think Xiaohu can be kind of exposed in the top side, and I think RNG, when Xiaohu isn't the win condition, they don't really have a win condition.
I don't know about that one, Chief. I think RNG had a fun game, and we never flame G2 for having fun games, and I think they had a fun series where they tried something new. We will never see Xiaohu on Sion top ever again, but I definitely believe that I don't believe they're overrated. I think if I was to say if anyone was overrated, this is kind of the flip on you, I think top esports are overrated. I think they have an explosive early game, and then after that, it's just kind of a coin flip sometimes. And it's like, I will admit, Jackie Love is still Jackie Love, and Jackie Love is amazing, and I'll never take that away from him. But every now and again, even in the WE series, it was just like, well, why not? And they go for these over-aggressive plays, they go for these overconfident moves, and then they get punished for it. And, like, fair enough, WE couldn't punish them for it, but teams like EDG, RNG, hell, even JDG will really bring them down the hammer. And I think that people are kind of, like, glossing over those kind of moments, because they're like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's top esports, they look great in the first 15 minutes.
I'm not glossing over those moments, I'm embracing those moments. Those moments are what makes top esports so good, because they limit test in every single game they play throughout the entire year, and then they get to the best of fives. They already know the limits. All the other teams, they still have to test whether they can grab that extra blue buff and completely throw their tempo. Sometimes, and we were watching earlier, they literally threw 2 deaths away for a blue buff, right? But it was actually just this insane 6-head play where they forced WE to blow both teleports to punish them. So in 2 minutes, they have the advantage for Drake. It's just, they're just too insane. I will make
a bold call. I will make a bold call and say they will make it to top 4, double elimination in playoffs. They will not win a single best of 5 after that. They will come out as 4th.
I'm saving my spicy takes for later, so no comment, gentlemen. No comment.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back.
Okay, so the team that
Rob, I think you want to talk about RNG.
Sorry, what? So,
you sounded like you really wanted to defend.
Oh yeah, I mean for RNG. Look, well, actually, what I was gonna say was I feel bad because I actually had this conversation with Lyric, and I think Lyric brought up a lot of the really good points, which was like, and he said it on a couple of different occasions, which is, in the LPL, you don't have to be good at multiple different styles. You can just be really, really good at one style, and you're gonna do really well. We've literally seen it throughout every single year.
Until you play against JDG.
I mean, you're here defending top esports and using that same logic to critique RNG, which just is like
expose.
But I think
it's not true at all. Top esports are a trident team. Anyway, continue.
But then I think as well, in that series against JDG, they played around bot side, which I don't think works. You just play around Xiaohu, make it work. And then game 2 was just that draft. I was just like, I don't know what she's going to do. There was no hope for you in game 2. So yeah, I think I don't think JDG exposed RNG. All they really proved was that RNG really should just keep playing around topside, which I don't think anyone really doubted. But the team that I'm actually genuinely think is overrated is EDG. I think this team has been one that's like, if you snowball early, fantastic. They are really good at closing out. If they go even into mid to late game team fights, they just suck. Like, Flandre and Mako do not look like they're working together at all. They're engaging onto different targets. They're not synchronizing at all in their engages. Viper can clutch out some of these fights and Scout can make it look good. But honestly, like, I feel like if EDG don't get off to a good early start, teams just pick them off in the mid to late game and it all falls over.
I don't know, man. They decimated WE. Like, they completely... Like, Zhezhe was just in Beishang's head the entire series, and I was just like, but this is a team that knows what they're doing. This is a team that understands what they can do and how they can manipulate the map.
First or second, not potentially 6th, 7th like WE. Like, this is what I mean.
True, but I still think that WE are a decent team. I still think WE, fair enough, they've fallen off the bandwagon a little bit, but, like, I still think, like, when you're going up against, like, again, 6th place or even, like, 7th if it goes really badly for EDG, or sorry, excuse me, for WE, like, they're teams that you will go up and face against. They're teams that you will play against, and, like, they look super competitive against RNG. Yes, they lost that series, but they did look hyper competitive in it. I don't know. I think it's... I suppose this is the whole point of the playoff parlay. It's just like, I'm a fight you on it and say that I don't agree.
But look, I just think that these guys
are deserving top 2.
I think that series kind of proved it for me, because EDG had that early win, and then they just fell apart in those late game team fights, and it really didn't work out for them. And there were games that RNG shouldn't have won.
Then there was the V5 game where me and Jordan were scarred for life because we just had to remember the throw of all throws, and EDG were able to... Yep, there it is, the PTSD.
Don't talk to me about
V5. Able to come
back. My scalp is too cold from talking about V5. I'm never talking about V5 again. They're my overrated team. There you go. And they're in 12th place.
Summer split, boys.
All right, let's move on from overrated, underrated. But I'm going to stick on the topic of EDG slightly here, because I'm going to bring up the next topic, and this one may shock audiences across the world. As the kind of top esports Kool-Aid hype guy, I'm actually going to bring out the statement that Viper is the best AD carry in the LPL right now. Now, I've been riding the Jackie Love hype train for the entire year, right? For the whole of last year as well. But in their recent game, I forget who it was against, but the play where he steps in front of Mako so that he can tank the hook and cleanse it and walk away, I think that showed a creativity and play from Viper that Jackie Love often doesn't bring to the table. I think they have two different mentalities as AD carries, where Jackie Love wants to find absolutely every ounce of damage that he can, and he's got a support that kind of goes for that all-in style alongside him. So I think in lane matchups, they match really, really well. But what I think Viper brings to the table, and if he had a more aggressive support, I think he would bring that to the 2v2 as well. I think it's Mako is the more reserved of the two when it comes to the 2v2. But I think that Viper is closer to what you would consider like a perfect player, right? He's closer to what is correct to League of Legends in the AD carry role, and I think that he does have the killer instinct. When he sees an opportunity, he will go for it and he will make the play, but he doesn't just coin flip plays in the same way as Jackie Love. So I think pound for pound, if you played 100 games and averaged it out, Viper's going to perform better.
I don't know, man. Like, I suppose like it's the Korean ADC versus Chinese ADC. It's the Uzi versus the Deft, and in the historical sense as such. And it's, for me, it's I'm gonna pick Uzi every single time, man, because, or in this particular case, I'm gonna pick Jackie Love because the guy, like myself and Dagda were only talking about this earlier today, where even when top esports look bad, Jackie Love still looks good. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do in a team where, like, everyone could literally be 100% running it down, and you're still coming out with a sick
Point me at the game where
move.
Viper looked bad this split.
I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'm not saying Viper is bad. I'm just saying he's not the best.
All right. Anyone else want to come at me on this one? Because I think
the more I think about it, my opinion is kind of weird because I think you're right. Like I think black and white in isolation, like Viper plays the more like correct way of League of Legends. He's much smarter about his decisions, doesn't make as many mistakes. Solid laning, great team fight. Like he has all of it. The thing is, what I prefer in my AD carry though is what JackeyLove brings because though I think you're right, I think if you again analyze it in a vacuum of who makes less mistakes, plays better, maybe positions more correctly in like a 5v5 team game, it'll be Viper every time. But if you look at like who's going to just hard carry your team to playoffs when you don't deserve to go there, it is going to be JackeyLove. It's a lot like the discussion we had about Knight versus Rookie last year, right? To where I think Knight was playing a more correct style of League of Legends, and this is talking outside of laning phase because I think like both players are good in lane. Rookie, Knight, JackeyLove, and Viper. Yeah. But once you get to that mid game, it's like it's that like clutch factor that JackeyLove can bring. And sure, I guess there's a bit of like anti-clutch in there as well. But there's one thing I like about JackeyLove, and this goes to a lot of players in the LPL, like top players, is I do think a lot of them realize when it's okay to die. Like, hey, we're having a fight right now. Dragon's in 3 minutes. There's no Baron up. Like there's nothing going on. I'm going to go for this pick because if I find this pick, it will push the game so much further in my direction than the enemy team getting a kill off me. And I also value the skill of being able to like push the tempo of the game forward because I think that is a much harder like thing to find in a player than someone who is maybe more reserved, more like waiting for the right opportunity. I feel like there's a lot more room to grow when you play as aggressively as JackeyLove does.
I do agree with your points, ultimately, and I want to agree with you. Like, I think everyone knows I want to say it's JackeyLove. But the problem is, I think that there are a lot of situations where the creativity of play and the way Viper looks at the game holistically is often better than JackeyLove. I think JackeyLove plays for JackeyLove in a lot of situations. Yeah. And I think that, it is that two-sided coin where sometimes he's going to make that play. And while, yes, I agree, there are moments where he is looking at the game from like a higher level and really, really understanding what he can and can't do. I think there are also other times where he goes, I'm going to go in. I think it's a really... And that's the entire extent of the thought process. I think it's a really hard
discussion. And kind of Lyric kind of hit on it there. It's like, I feel like when I watch JackeyLove could win me the game. When I watch Viper could save me the game. And that's kind of the way I kind of look at the two. And it's like, Viper can make the play that will, like, if I'm behind, can bring us back into it. He will have that creative play where, like, as we say, tank the hook for his support, so then he can cleanse it and we can do it that way. Like, he can be creative. But I think if I straight up just want, like, someone who's going to punch their way through to the finish line, it's JackeyLove. And I kind of want to stick... I'm going to stick with JackeyLove as well. Because I do feel, again, same logic that I had for the Rookie Knight conversation was, if I wanted someone that was going to hard carry this game, put me on their back and go, I'm taking it, it is JackeyLove. Whereas I think if I have Viper, I don't have that same like super, super high ceiling, but I do have a higher level of consistency.
It's like when you talk about Christmas movie, all right? The correct choice, isn't necessarily the best. Like, sometimes you just want to watch Die Hard. It's a Christmas movie. It's just a movie that you watch and it's explosive, it's awesome, it's fun. And that's what JackeyLove is. He's the diehard of Christmas movies, where it's not correct, but it's correct.
I didn't want this to get violent, but if you're going to insinuate that Die Hard isn't one of the best movies of all time, then this is going to lead to fisticuffs.
I'm not saying it's not. Okay? That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a Christmas, but in the context of a Christmas movie, people would argue with you that what's the perfect Christmas movie? Miracle on 34th Street. That's more your Viper. It's traditional.
It's at Christmas. Let's move on from Die Hard.
I was going to say, I do want to add the context of, like, to me, in context of, like, LPL 80 carries, like, on a scale of, like, 0 to 100, they're both, like, 95s to me. Like it's very hard to discern which one I would prefer. And, again, I do think I agree that in isolation, I think Vipers is the better player. Vipers making less mistakes. Vipers, doing all the things you want and need out of an 80 carry. But I think both of them are so insane. It's, like, the nuances of, okay, well, I prefer this small thing or this small thing. Exactly, right? It's not about like, hey, well, Viper sucks and Jackie Love's great, or vice versa. It's like, man, I feel like you put either of these guys on like OMG or Rogue Warriors, and they might be able to hard carry them to like a middle tier team, right?
Yeah, that's maybe true. And aiming wishes he was in that conversation of that caliber right now.
He tried.
Kind of needed to. All right, let's move on with the conversation. Dagda, I'm going to kick it over to you because I believe you have a topic that you want to bring to the table here.
So my topic is actually, because I feel like they don't get enough praise, I think top lane is the most slept on lane in the LPL, and especially coming into playoffs. Like, it's actually insane when you look towards it. Like, the players that we have right now in top are the Shy, Bin, 369, Zoom, Xiaohu, Flandre, Nuggery, and even if you look at like the other guys like Bubu, Cube, Makuya in their own circumstances can be pretty good. I mean, Bubu has the most solo kills in the LPL right now at 17. Like, it's kind of insane that this is the depth of talent that we're playing with, and we end up talking about like the AD carries made in the jungle way more than we actually discussed this top lane.
I still think jungles are most stacked though. Like I can definitely say that we sleep on a little bit, but like I look at the jungle pool and I'm just like, these guys are not just like stacked in terms of like the league, they're stacked in terms of the world. Like I genuinely struggle to think of like more junglers elsewhere in like the entirety of League of Legends ecosystems that can actually stack up to some of the guys we have here. Like, Wei has come up as a tenfold. Karsus is back on his best. You know, I even though I agree we have great top lane talent, I suppose I would personally still think that our jungle is the most stacked out of anything else.
For me,
entirely.
Oh, you can go on, Dagda.
Oh, go on.
Oh, okay.
Go on. I was just going to get angry and just say, like, we have the literal world champion. We have the only dude to pick up a pentakill in the finals ever in a world championship final. And then it's just like, we've still got, like, Zoom, the Shy, another world champion. Like, our top lane talent is just insane.
I think the biggest argument actually is Morgan is no longer in the pool, so
yeah.
I don't think we can.
Munchables LCK 2022. You heard it here first, but
just follow Morgan wherever he goes.
I feel like for me, it depends on the context of the discussion. Since we're talking about playoffs, I agree with Dagda. I think in terms of like S tier talent, top lane is our most like stacked role at a top level. I think when you look at playoffs, 8 out of 10 top laners are in that like S to A plus range, right? The only ones who are kind of standing out is Makuya is below average. I think that's a fair statement. And then I think Cube is decent. Cube's an average player. He's not, he's not in that top 8, but still, I think he's fine. He's solid. He performs well. To where when I look at jungle, I think jungle is the role, if you look throughout the league, it is very hard to look at a team with a bad jungler or even teams with struggling junglers. It's like, Aki's been one of the best players on OMG. Hacker's been one of the best players on his team. You look Rogue Warriors is Haro. V5 is Wei, who had a phenomenal split. But for me, the top level of jungle is lower than it was in summer. I think like JG was struggling. Kanavi wasn't playing the same. I do think Wei's having a phenomenal split. But again, I wonder how much it is a byproduct of RNG system. Consistently winning top. They have like a very clear, straightforward goal. We saw on E-Star that's what Wei needed, right? It was the same goal. I'm in a level 2 gank bot. I need to see more out of like top LPL junglers, though I do think like throughout the league it's more consistent. But Dagda said it. We got Zoom, we got Flandre, we got Nuggery, we got Breathe. Like, who don't Bin? You can't go through like the playoff teams in LPL and be like dissatisfied. I think we probably have the best top laners in the world holistically, though whenever we say these things, I always need to remember we have the most teams of any league. It's very easy to look at our league and be like, oh, we have the best of this, because it's like, we have the most of this, we have the most.
I think I just want to give a big shout out to Flandre as well. I feel like he's not talked about enough because there's so many great top laners in the league. Like, when you think top lanes in LPL, you think of Zoom, you think of 369, you think of Xiaohu now. I think Flandre, especially after being ELO held on LNG last year, getting to play on a good roster, it feels like Flandre gets to play the game again.
I do want to say,
I'm so happy for Flandre.
He has been a bit underwhelming for me, sadly. I think at the beginning of the split, I was really hyped on him. True.
Compared
and the
to
thing
2020,
is, we know EDG don't play around him. Sometimes they'll give him some ganks early, but the one thing I do want to praise Flandre for is the fact that I think other than Zoom, he like has some of the best like TPs and flanks in the league. So there's still some areas I really like Flandre, but at the same time, like Dagda was saying earlier, some of his team fighting, some of his decision making, even his like laning it isn't kind of what it was hyped up to be coming into this split.
I will say his Jace is sick though. Flandre's Jace is so good. It's unreal. Like almost every time he gets
LPL
it's just like
Jace
solo kills. I'm just like, all right, cool. It's just Flandre.
Man, I just want Flandre on Parley, man. I'll never forget that. Like that defense against IG. I'll never forget.
Well, and again,
that.
when I say disappointing, still like an A+ tier top laner in the LPL. Still like it's so hard to contend and like rank these guys in order with how good all of them are, and some of them in different areas, right? Like looking at the Shy in terms of laning, and then maybe someone like Zoom, even though a great laner, more indexed into like team play. It's I don't know, man. LPL top is something else.
All right, so I'm going to move the conversation on to our last topic now, and Penguin, I'm going to let you set this one up because this is your topic, and I think this one is maybe going to be the spiciest one yet. We could have some fisticuffs coming out for this last one.
So I'm wearing my LEC hoodie. I used to work for the LEC as a stats person, so I'm all about the kings, the dynasties, the legacies. I genuinely believe that RNG, EDG are back on top, and they're back to stay on top. I think we're getting the oldest rivalry in LPL in terms of actual top-level talent, where it used to be RNG, EDG all the time, and I think it's going to be here for a little bit longer than just this split.
Do you guys want me to start with my spicy take right away? Does anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, look, I've been waiting for this. You've hyped it up.
Does anyone want to see Lyric kill a man?
So, I'm just going to say this, Penguin. I think you couldn't be absolutely more wrong if you tried. Your play-by-play colors are showing a little bit right now, but here's where I come in. I think we are going to get a top esports JDG final once again, and I feel like a bit of this is by the bracket, because I'll say this: RNG are the best team in the league right now, but I actually think JDG are the perfect counter to RNG, as you know we were kind of talking about earlier. I think the only hard part about beating RNG will be the draft. They have a lot of flexibility, but I still think no matter what they get, Zoom will be able to come out with at least a neutral matchup against Xiaohu, come out ahead. We saw in that Sion game, it wasn't even about the lane. It's Xiaohu made a mistake at level 1. Zoom punished him really hard. JDG are smart. They dove him over and over again, got a big enough lead, great with vision control. I think they're the only team that can match RNG in smarts. They're going to beat them in playoffs. And guess what? Top esports won't even have to play RNG. They're going to beat EDG. And the thing about EDG, like Dagda said, if EDG don't get an early lead, I think they are very questionable in terms of mid-game decision-making. They're not going to get an early lead against Top Esports. Dagda, you wait your turn. I'm going all in down this rabbit hole. Top Esports are going to beat EDG. We're going to get a Top Esports JDG upper bracket final. Top Esports are going to win. I'll go into that later because I'm sure this is going to drag on too long. JDG beat RNG again, and then bam, Top Esports JDG final. I'm all in, guys.
You're going to be so tomato red-faced when RNG lose to LGD tomorrow to big brain it, avoid JDG in the playoffs because EDG takes first. And then they just get rid of it. They just move away from
just as context, because we got 4 days until playoffs actually start. We have to record this a little early, so we're 1 day behind.
I will be so triggered. I thought about this like so in depth. I was sitting like staring at this.
Jordan shaves his head as well.
Oh my god.
I genuinely don't believe like lightning strikes twice. I don't think JDG get the same kind of run at RNG that they got in the regular split. I think the regular split was like I said, like a blip in the radar of like, oh, well, we know what we're not going to be doing. We're not going to be putting Sion in the top lane for Xiaohu. And they're just going to completely big brain it. Like you said, that JDG are a smart team, and I do think they're kind of underrated. I don't think that this is going to be a top esports. I still stand by my point. Top esports will not win at best.
Do you guys remember last year? I can't remember who it was. It might have been top esports versus JDG, where I think 369 picked Jace or Lucian, and you know what Zoom pulled out? He pulled out Malphite. And, you know, he absolutely... he didn't actually play that well. His ultimates were terrible. But he still absolutely clapped 369. And then he got up to, like, 1,000 armor because there was also a Mountain Soul. So the thing is, I'm actually not concerned about Xiaohu picking carries either. I think Zoom's champion pool is deep enough. If we see the Jace, you know, Zoom's going to pull out something like the Wukong. If he pulls out any other, you know, carry or goes maybe towards a Cho'Gath or a different tank, we can see the set come out. And my thing is... even though I think Xiaohu has been one of the best top laners this split, he still makes a lot of mistakes, like we saw in their win up against TS, where he was continuously trying to dive 369. It was Jace against, can't remember what 369 was playing, but I remember one instance, he hammer forms, Q's in under turret, instantly has to flash away and realize, oh my god, I messed up. And that might just be one example, but we've seen things like that from Xiaohu all split, and Xiaohu's playstyle really only works to its maximum impact because of how much Wei plays around top lane. And one thing we know about Kanavi is able to adapt and play around Zoom quite heavily. And I'm just going to say this might be another controversial opinion. I think Yigao's better than Cryan. I honestly think Cryan is pretty overrated by the community. I don't think he's bad by any means. Good mid laner, but he's very much like a role player Phil to me. He doesn't really win lane too hard against anyone. He's not a massive playmaker. Does his job, moves for his team. If Yigao gets on any of his champions, Yigao will constantly push, Yigao will constantly roam, and I think without solo lane prio, JDG just win. It doesn't even matter if their bot lane solo kills JDG's, because guess what? They did that in their last series, and JDG still won. Bot lane doesn't matter. RNG cannot play without side lane pressure in my mind.
I just can't wait for you to just be like sitting there with your head in your hands, just going, how could I have been so wrong? Penguin showed me the way. Dagda led me to the path of righteousness, and I shunned them both.
Hey,
and it's
the funniest thing again is I'm admitting, I think RNG are the best team in the league. I think if you go through the checkboxes of like what they're good at and how good they are at, they're the best. But they're still going to lose to JDG. Still going to lose twice.
I think.
Nope.
I'm like.
Yeah, I want to give Dagda an opportunity.
I don't think like I do agree with what Lyric's saying. I think the biggest thing for me is that I'm still not fully convinced by JDG. Like, I'm not saying they're overrated, underrated, whatever it might be. I just think we've seen mistakes from JDG, and not from Zoom. I think Zoom is incredible, but certainly from Kanavi and the way that they've been playing around the lane priority that they have, it hasn't been that spectacular over the course of the split. And I really do think that, like, if you tried to pull that stuff against Wei, and even with Gal and Ming, I'm not saying play around bot side, but certainly Gal and Ming have been very good at adapting and reacting to that. Ming being able to work in conjunction with Wei, whereas I don't see the same from Lumao. I think he's been very much stuck to the bot side. I actually do think that there are opportunities for RNG to get this kind of roaming play that can work in their favor and just create numbers advantages for themselves. I do agree if it's left to like just a bog standard, it's like, cool, Gal and Ming are stuck bot side, they're not doing anything. I think that we do get the direction that Lyric said. I just think that Ming has been so impressive and it's going to have a really big impact. And then to bring this full circle, he pulls out the Rel. He brings out the pick for the LPL playoffs, smacks him down. We get Wei on his Lilia, the best Lilia we have in the league. It's the slumber storm of the century, and JDG gets sent packing.
Look, I'm gonna put a final note as we'll round out the show here because we're starting to get over time. But I just want to bring back to what we initially said here, what the actual argument point was, and that was that RNG and EDG are going to begin a new legacy, and the rest of the teams are done. So I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think that, especially with EDG, I don't think that they're above, but also Top Esports and JDG both have insane top laners and happily play around the top side, so I think they both can contest RNG. I definitely think that even if RNG ends up winning this split, I think it will be like Top Esports or JDG in the final with them rather than EDG. So I think ultimately I disagree with this statement. Any final statements that you guys want to throw out there before we round out the show and finish out the night here?
I miss you guys.
It's lonely. It's lonely by ourselves. Yeah. Well, we got each other. But we have.
I was looking for spicy takes, but you know what? I actually
wait.
So let's end on that.
I want to end on one spicy take.
Heartwarming
Mole is a top 4 mid laner in this league. Thank you.
Okay, never mind.
Not even biased. Completely serious. Okay, continue the outro.
Not even in playoffs.
Whoa. He can't control his team.
All right. That's not hang on. All right, moving on. That's not even a spicy take. That's like a moldy take. We're going to close out the show. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do let us know in the comments. And if it's popular, we'll do more episodes. Thank you. And we'll see you guys in playoffs.